My name is Tony Yang. If you're new to the sessions, I essentially run the growth practice here at Mucker Capital. We're an early stage VC fund. We also run an accelerator. And my role primarily is to work directly with our founders and their portfolio companies to help the company scale. And we always try to find relevant experts in the marketplace or in the ecosystem. And so I got to know Fivos and Dan, Fivos Aresti and Dan Rosenthal. They're over at the ColdIQ team. Got to know them over the last several months, and they have a really interesting outbound playbook that they call it inbound, outbound. I think I'm butchering it, but yeah, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I asked them to come and address our group today because there's a lot of great learnings that, especially for our portcos, if you're doing some outbound activities, you're going to want to take a lot of notes. So without further ado, Fivos, Dan, welcome. Go ahead and let's dive in.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot, Tony. So I guess I'll make the intro about the first topic that we're going to discuss. Just a bit of background about ColdIQ. We're essentially an agency. We work with more than 200 B2B companies. We help them with their outbound and inbound motion, primarily outbound. And we do this with a done-for-you service, and we have a coaching program. But there's a free resource on the website. We compare and rank the best tools out there when it comes to sales tech. There's more than 1,000 tools, completely free. You can check it out. Out of those 4,000 tools, we do not use all of them because that will be too much. We use around 20, 25, I will say. Those are the best. And I want to make just an introduction of, what do we do when we set up these systems and what could early stage startups do. So by the end of the presentation, I think you will have a clear understanding of what you could run yourself, because you don't need anyone to run it realistically. And Dan will also dive deeper and show you exactly how you can do it in the software that we use. So to start off, I prefer to show things in Miro. So I will have to exit from here and just go in Miro, because for me, it's just the best way to explain complex concepts. So this is what we believe. So a lot of things have changed when it comes to doing outbound. First of all, Google and Outlook, they have a lot of restrictions, right? It's very tough to land in the primary. So, and a lot of people are still doing it manually, while there's AI out there and a lot of companies are using these tools, right? So what we believe in is that the future key role in sales will be the go-to-market operator. And that person in the organizations will take care of these 6 pillars right here, which are essential to create an outbound motion that is automated and personalized at scale. So to dive deeper into this, I think the very first topic we need to cover. By the way, Tony, if you have any questions while I'm covering this, just let me know if anyone else in the chat has, because I cannot see the questions in the chat. So first thing is email infrastructure. If I scroll here, I'll just give you 9 of the best tips that we found, because we send more than 1 million emails every single month. So the first and most important thing, disable any tracking links, protect your primary domain. You need to buy separate mailboxes and domains, ideally 2 mailboxes per domain, and ideally half Google and half Outlook, and then warm them up for 2 weeks so you don't land in spam, right? You all set up all the right records. Do not send more than 50 emails per day per domain. Use spin tags in your copy and personalization, because that's going to help with Google trying to see, whether this email is going to thousands of people. So you will probably be marked as spam. And verify all the emails, especially if you're getting them from a tool like Apollo or SalesNav. Most of them are not validated. People leave their companies, they still have those emails. So run them through a validation tool. There's a lot. You can check our website, but we'll cover that later as far as tool stack. Before I go back to, what needs to be done, I can show you the numbers when it comes to, how many domains, how many mailboxes do you need? So if you do a classic split of 10 domains and 20 mailboxes, and this is what we typically do, assuming you can send only 25 emails per day per mailbox, and you have only 23 working days, it means you can send out around 600 emails per month per mailbox with the current setup, right? So if you just do the math here, you'll see that it's around 11K emails that you can send. And with a 3-step sequence, which means 3 emails, you can reach out around 3.5K, 3.8K leads every single month, right? So if you want to do less, if you want to do more, you just need to adjust these. Okay. So let's go back to Miro.
Hey, Fivos, couple of questions from the audience just to clarify for our audience. So can you explain what spin tax is? And then I have another question following that.
Yeah. So spin tax, it depends on what tool you're using, but it's basically a way for you to tell the tool to randomize what output. So like the most classic example of spin tax is in your email greeting. So let's say I wanted to say, hi Fivos, but I wouldn't want to say hi Fivos in every email because that starts everything off the same way. You want to introduce a little bit of variety into your email. So I would have a spin tax variable, which let's say in like your comment tool would just be like a squiggly bracket, hi, straight bracket, hey, and a squiggly bracket. Essentially what it is I can program it. So 50% of the emails start with hi, 50% start with hey. But you want to do this in like more key areas of your copy. So from Google Microsoft's perspective, you're sending out, at least emails that you're slightly, varying each time. They don't like bulk senders. So we use spin tax to just introduce variety. Hopefully that made sense.
Cool. Thank you. And I know you're going to cover tools in a second, but are there certain tools that allow you to implement spin tax?
So Smart Lead, Instant Lead, Lemlist, like most big sending tools will have their own language for doing spin tax, but actually in terms of like introducing it into your copy, GPT is great. If you just give GPT some copy, say, add some spin tax, it will know what spin tax is and it will help you out. Maybe you just want to give some parameters as to how much spin tax you want, but that's something that we typically do. And actually Instantly has an AI spin tax generator built into their tool. So that's a useful one.
Cool. Thanks, Dan.
Perfect. Great explanation. Dan is
sorry to one comment for that spreadsheet. So that is like an excellent example that we try to get our portcos to do when they're planning for outbound. So if you're a portco, or even if you're not, if you're here with us, pay attention to, the planning part of it in terms of, the math behind how many outbound messages can you send, and you got to like temper that with like your targets and expected results and all that. So that's a very important step then Fivos made. So, thanks.
Yeah, great point. Awesome. Then to continue to this part that I was showing before, the second part that we need to cover is list building. So the good thing about outbound is that you can actually choose who you're going to reach out and who's potentially going to be your customer, right? So we really believe that with outbound, the key metric is not really, MQLs, SQLs, is really ICP pipeline progression. Because let's say we start building the initial list. These are the three things that we will look first to identify, okay, what is the ICP, okay? There's three signals. The first one is firmographics, headcount, industry, etc. Second is technographics, and you can get them with many tools like which tech they're using. This is applicable for some companies. And then buying intent. For the intent, it could be hiring signals, website traffic, if they have a sales-led motion, if they have certain job titles, if they don't have certain job titles. My biggest recommendation here will be to use a tool like a note taker, like Attention or Circleback. And whenever you have an inbound lead, you ask them, why now? That is the key question. And then using a tool like Attention can then give you a summary of all the moments you asked in your calls, why now? So every time someone answers that question in your sales calls, you understand what's the intent. And that's how you can then optimize your outbound. Okay. And this is great to always backtest with your closed won opportunities. But if it's very early stage, again, it's all assumptions, right? So that's list building, that's covered. So again, your list is relevant and you're not spraying and praying. That's the last thing you want for your brand reputation, especially if you're a portfolio company of market capital. So if we move forward, then there's three parts that are actually go together. And these are data enrichment and lead scoring, lead prioritization. So the way that we've found that is actually the best in doing it is by using a tool like Clay Of course, there is more tools out there like Data Bar, and there's another one from YC that came out. But to give you an understanding of what you could do inside of such a tool, this is what it looks like. I'll just pull this up, so I'll make it as interactive as possible. But Dan will show a complete workflow, which will make everything way easier. So if I just open a table, like a blank table, you can see it's like a big spreadsheet with APIs. So if I click Add Enrichment, there's more than 75 tools actually. I think now it's 100. And you can use them in this big spreadsheet. So the whole idea is that every point that an SDR will manually research for to find, you can now automate it with a tool like this, right? And you can create a lot of different columns. And then at the end of it, you don't need to do any manual research, right? You build your initial list, you put it here, research is done, because usually you cannot really rely on prospecting databases. They don't have as many information as you will typically like. That's why you're most likely hiring SDRs, right? And then let's say we've finalized on these. The next step is to create something out of that, out of all those data points that you have, right? So the good thing is that you can use GPD and cloud inside of Clay, and you can prompt it. So I'll show you some examples. We have more than 100 different templates when it comes to that. You can, essentially just create a prompt here. My recommendation is to use Cloud Prompt Generator here, because you can, if you just put 3 lines, then you can have a massive prompt, and it's actually way better. The better your prompt, the better the output will be. So pay attention when you're creating these prompts. And the whole idea of this is that you're going to create snippets. So these snippets can then be you can then send them to your engagement tool. So your engagement tool is what's actually going to do the outreach. And then Dan mentioned already some of the best ones out there. He mentioned Smart Lead. He mentioned Instantly. There's Lemlist. There's a couple of more, but these are probably good to go if you choose one of these. But there's like Growth Machine as well for multi-channel. So the idea is that you can map them inside of Clay. And if you map all these data points, this is how you can, if I go back, you can create this AI personalized copywriting. So the idea of AI personalized copywriting is not that you will write the whole copy with AI, because it will just look bad. We're not there yet. You cannot do the whole copy with AI, and people will smell it that this is AI generated. So the idea is that it's just snippets. It's a few words. So it's max 8 words in a copy, 10 words. And then the rest of the copy is still your value proposition adjusted to the persona. And this is how you're able to create the personalized outreach at scale. So with all of these steps, you do the outreach, and then there's 2 options. You either automate this, and you can completely automate it with a sequencer tool, or for the top 200 to 1,000 accounts, what companies tend to do is they decide to manually prospect them, which is totally fine. And then you get the benefit of the data enrichment part that your SDRs don't have to do manually. And then once you do that, you're going to have replies coming in, right? So that's where we believe the account executive who's full cycle or an SDR will jump. And then once there's a positive reply, the SDR will be able to convert it into a meeting. And this is how you can essentially achieve ICP pipeline progression. Everything, by the way, is in the slides. So if I go back to the slides, I just really like presenting in Miro, but yeah, you can see them here. So I know that Tony will share these later with you. So that's it from my side. There's questions when it comes to these things. We'll dive deeper and show a demo of what does it actually look like doing all this in the backend.
Awesome. I mean, let's give people a moment to ask any questions, because we're about to get pretty granular in terms of a real use case, a real example. So conceptually, does anyone have any questions around what Fivos has presented here?
Yeah, one question just came in. What do you think are good reply rates?
Yeah, it's sad. When I first started cold emailing, good reply rate was maybe 5%. Nowadays, if you get 5% reply rates, you're doing amazing. Like that's not just good, that's amazing. Unfortunately, nowadays, good is to be honest, 1%. If you can get 1 out of 100 people to even just tell you no, that's already good. It's gotten tougher. So that's what we're seeing across the board. Of course, we can vastly outperform that, vastly underperform that, but 1% is like the new baseline of like, okay, your campaign isn't completely destroyed. And what are good meeting booking rates? So typically, let's say, well, it really does depend on your offer, right? If you're offering someone, let's say, a free resource, you're going to get much more hand raises, much more people asking for it, but then you're going to lose out on people actually wanting to convert to a meeting to buy your product. Whereas if you kind of pitch more and they know what they're getting into, you're going to get more conversions out of those meetings. So this is a tough one to answer. Fivos, actually, you kind of present these baseline results. What do you tend to tell people who are trying to get an idea of what a good conversion rate is?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a lot of insights because we're doing this for a lot of B2B companies, but the main KPI that we always track, it's what's the positive reply to lead ratio. So how many leads do we need to generate one opportunity? And what we've seen is that generally an average campaign will need 370 leads. A good campaign will need 200 leads, and then a great campaign will need 100 leads to achieve this. So this is really variable, across, depending on product market fit, competition, industry, etc. But yeah, it's true that this works better for some than the others. But in any case, it builds brand awareness. So I definitely think that every company should have an outbound motion going on.
Yeah, I'll chime in. So I've seen a lot of industry reports, and when I was in house and doing this stuff, I'd say, yeah, like I agree with Dan. Like I've seen reports around 1 to 2% is benchmark or standard for reply rates for outbound, and best in class companies are getting 6% to 8%, but like they got their shit down, right? So it's like aim for 1 or 2, but at the end of the day, it's really you're benchmarking against yourself. Like that's really the answer that I tell all of my portcos. Like you establish a baseline and you want to do better. Like that's the whole purpose of experimentation, A/B testing, right? And then something that we're going to be talking about later on, which is it really depends on the context. For cold outbound, meaning someone who you're reaching out to a contact who has never engaged with you before, you're probably going to get a lower response rate than if someone who you've been quote unquote warming up. This is not a session on account-based marketing. We'll do another session on that at some point. But a common tactic or part of the playbook is to run air cover type of ad, whether it's on social, LinkedIn, whatever, just to warm things up, or even as part of a outbound sequence. There's different social selling tactics that you can employ so that when you're reaching out to someone with a message, it's not quite completely cold. They've been exposed to your brand before. And so one last, and I don't want to take over this conversation because it's, there's a lot of learnings that Dan and Fivos are going to share. But what I've seen and what I tell our portcos is for cold outbounds, for when you set a meeting, I probably see around 60 to 70% show, like a show rate of 60 to 70%. But if they come in inbound and if they're, requesting a demo, there's intent behind that. And if you set a meeting, you want to see over 90% because people are coming to you. So that's kind of an example of thinking about the intent, right? Why Fivos brought up the buying intent signals. Again, if you're reaching out to someone who's completely cold, haven't heard of you, you're going to see a lower response rate. Okay, we've got a bunch of questions that came in. Maybe we'll go for one more and then we'll continue and then we'll address the rest at the end. Does that sound good to you guys, Dan? Fivos?
Yeah, that sounds awesome. If I could pick one out, I really like Benjamin's question, if I can answer that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think as important as like the not AI personalization in general is, I think what's much more important right now is relevancy. There's a guy in our space, in like the whole sort of AI GTM space. His name is Jordan Crawford, and he's coined this term, your list is your message. And what he means by that is the granularity to which you segment your list allows you to write copy that is relevant towards that list. Thus, your list is your copy. So to answer Benjamin's question about tailoring your outreach to persona, would it be based on job title, department? And if so, how do you go about it? I think there's 3 ways to build your list. You can start at the company level, like sort of account-based marketing approach. You can start at the person level and with some, like, I guess, rough qualification around the company. Maybe you need to do further qualification, or starting at a signal. This is kind of the new 2024 thing. Maybe I want to start at companies hiring for a certain job title that's relevant to us. Well, then I start at that signal, work backwards from it, sort of like an outside-in approach. What I would say, if I had maximum amount of resources, maximum amount of time, here's how I would go about it. And that kind of answers your question about tailoring outreach to your persona. I would basically map out your entire TAM. The simplest way to do this is probably just with Sales Nav. The filtering gets a bit tough there, so you can kind of consolidate maybe Sales Nav in something like Apollo or ZoomInfo, but just try and like get as many companies that fit to your ICP as possible. I would then score them, ideally with an AI scoring approach that I'll show you shortly. So I would like take your entire TAM, understand who's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then in each of those segments, whether that be industry segments or, you know, whatever's relevant to your GTM, I would then build sublists based off of that account list. So lists of certain job titles within tier 1 companies, lists of these signals coming from these tier 2 companies, right? And so I would kind of start at your base of truth, which is your TAM, your total addressable market scope, and then work backwards from that. And so that way, from the get-go, you're automatically thinking about segments. Whereas like a lot of reps want to just create the biggest campaign possible. So they do broad targeting on Apollo, maybe grab like 5,000 prospects, send the same email to all of them. There's no segmentation there. Ideally, you segment that 5,000 into like, what are the 5, 10 different unique messages I can send to those 5,000 people? And that's how you're going to increase your positive response rate. So, but very simply to answer your question, do we do it on department, title? It really depends on your GTM. For us specifically, it's very important for us to talk to head of sales, but we also sometimes talk to rev ops, and that's a different conversation. So that would be 2 different segments. And then there's the C-level conversations. That would be like a 3rd segment, but that's just for us. Potentially for you, it's less about the title, more about the department. Maybe you're just worried about customer service or customer success departments, right? So it does depend on your GTM, and, you know, let the numbers do the talking in terms of which segment to prioritize. Sorry for a bit of a long-winded answer there, Tony, but I know it's taking your head, so I guess I did good there.
Yeah, for Mucker Portco companies, we have a lot of resources in our founder portal. If you guys haven't checked that out, one of them is a persona template. So like we just label that, what you just described, as personas, where if you do a good job at segmenting or identifying your personas, sometimes it's around job title, something around department, sometimes it's about, you know, some other characterization, right? It's the point that Fivos and Dan is making is you want to make your messaging relevant to a group of people that has the same needs, challenges, pain points, etc. That's what's going to make your message resonate. All right. So I know we got a lot to cover and there's several questions. Let's try to address them at the end. But yeah, I'm super excited to see examples of how you guys have done it at ColdIQ.
Sounds good. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Fivos, if that's okay.
Sure thing.
Cool. So I just noticed one question at the end there in terms of one tool I would recommend. So as people said, there's competitors to Clay out there like Databar, Persona AI. If there's one tool that we use most, it's Clay, but that's, you know, our preference. There's different alternatives out there. You can achieve something similar with things like Common Room, Unify. You could even do a lot of the stuff with Zapier. So it's really up to your preference, but Clay, Databar, probably good choices there. So I'm just going to share my screen. I want to start with the exciting stuff. These are our outbound campaign results. We do a lot more volume for clients. So this is campaigns that I've run for ColdIQ, but I want to show you, like, proof is in the pudding. These are all automated campaigns. We managed to generate 35 opportunities in the last just 4 weeks. So this is what's possible with outbound. Just wanted to base it. And to be honest, we have clients with much better results than this. I just wanted to show you specifically our outbound. So now I'm going to show you how we get to this result. I'm going to show you, if we have time, 2 different campaigns. So the original idea for today, sorry, do you guys see the video on the bottom, or is that Is that just, okay, good. I see my Everlow camera at the bottom, but good that you can't see it. So I was going to show you a campaign that basically takes your website visitors, qualifies them, and then if they're qualified, it reaches out to them automatically. It's something that we have running. You maybe have heard of RB2B. But I didn't realize that if we're speaking to startups here, potentially you guys don't have enough website visitors to make this that worth it. So I'm still going to show you that workflow, but I'm actually going to show you first a workflow that everyone here can do. That's a completely cold outbound workflow that I already launched today and already got 3 positive responses. So safe to say it's going pretty well. So just before I start, Fivos mentioned email infrastructure. He gave some great tips. Still, I feel like people are a bit lost there. So I just wanted to touch upon the email infrastructure bit. So we purchased domains across these different providers. We manage them on Cloudflare. Anyways, what I wanted to talk to you guys about was using providers that basically do the work for you. So if you're wanting Gmail, which is working slightly better right now, you can get inboxes directly from Instantly. You can also get them from services called Inbox Automate, and that's actually the backend behind SmartLeads inbox service. There's also Zapmail, and it's actually something we help with as well. For Outlook, you have the choice of Scaled Mail is a good one. Hypertide's a good one. You also have SMTP. I just wanted to put these names out there. Probably if I had to recommend one, it would either be Zapmail or us, just in terms of like actually outsourcing this, so you don't have to sit there doing the tech setup, and you can get, most of the results just from working with someone to do this for you. Here are just some recommendations I had. So once you have your email infrastructure set up, the first step that Fivos presented was list building. So where are we going to build lists? Sometimes you might want to do that in Apollo. Sometimes you might want to do that in SalesNow. Sometimes you might want to do it in different tools like Apple Market, Ocean.io. Here's the rule of thumb that I like to think about. SalesNav is going to be your biggest B2B database. I believe there's around 1 billion contacts on LinkedIn. That's much bigger than any prospecting database. I believe Apollo has 25% of that. I think it's around 200 million. Correct me if I'm wrong there. The thing with Apollo is it's completely clean data. They take the industry tags, they recategorize them into their own industries. They take the first names, they make sure that they're always uniform. They take the company names and make sure that there's no like random emojis that companies put on LinkedIn. They clean that data, but there's a lot less. So that's why if you're kind of maximizing for volume at the beginning, let's say you're a startup, I'd probably just go for a SalesNav subscription. You also get all the other benefits of SalesNav. So here's just a random search that I did that you guys can replicate on SalesNav. For me, it was 11 to 200 companies located in the US, and I was interested in reaching out to SDRs and BDRs because I am showing them basically what I'm showing you right now. We have a small program basically to enable SDRs to use more AI in their day-to-day. I wanted to talk to them about that program. I did all these different industries. The industry tags on SalesNav are pretty poor. They're very broad. As you see here, you have a different industry tag for technology, information, internet, and then technology, information, media. Like the overlap between those is very unclear. I just did a lot, and it doesn't matter because we're actually qualifying leads in Clay, and I'll show you that in a second. But I just wanted to reach out to tech companies, essentially. That's why I did these 5 industries. And then I had a bit too much volume. I wanted to run a smaller test. And so I just turned on this posted on LinkedIn filter to bring it down from like what was like I could show you. This was a massive amount of leads. I just wanted around 2,000. So I just did this post on LinkedIn filter. And this, if you're doing LinkedIn outreach, this filter is actually super important. This makes sure that the prospect is active on LinkedIn. In this case, it didn't actually matter because we're reaching out on email. I just wanted 2,500 leads. So perfect. We did that. How are you getting these leads out of Sales Navigator? There's a few tools out there, Prospeo, Vane. Our preference is Prospeo. So all you do is basically just click, it adds this onto your LinkedIn, export with Prospeo. You click that. In a few hours, it'll scrape all the leads. As you see here, you get some valid emails, some risky emails, some email not found. And this is the big issue if you rely on Apollo, ZoomInfo, any of these platforms for contact data. As you see here, you can almost assume that 50% of any contact you find on any of these databases, if you rely on one data provider, you're not gonna reach that entire list. You'll only be reaching about 50%. So that's why tools like Clay, DataBar again are so important, because I can then take the emails that were not found, try and find them with different tools. I can take those risky emails, confirm if they're actually valid or risky, and then if they're not valid, again, find new ones. So it's about sort of cleaning up that data you get from these different sources. So I take that Prospeo CSV right here, and I'm putting that into Clay. So as said, there's different alternatives, but Clay is truly a great tool that Fivos briefly explained. If I had to explain Clay in one sentence, it would be the ability to interact with APIs and data sources in a spreadsheet format. So here from Prospero, we had the first name and the last name and the full name, job title, LinkedIn URL, etc. In Clay, we're doing a small formula here just to clean up that first name. If you were getting this list from Apollo, you wouldn't need to do this just because that data is clean, but that's what we're doing because it's from Sales Lab directly. We get the company name, and again, we're doing actually an AI prompt to clean up that company name so it sounds more colloquial when we mention it in the copy. So like, for example, I'll take Aspen Field Services. If I was like reaching out to, would this be useful for Aspen Field Services? That doesn't sound so natural. Whereas if my call to action, would this be useful for Aspen? That sounds like a lot more how people actually talk. So this is an important small detail. Is one of the many ways that AI can kind of clean up your final output. We have the domain, the industry. This is all still from Prospero, the company LinkedIn description, the company followers, profile summary if they're on premium, the amount of time they've been in the position. This is all just from Sales Nav and Prospero. But now it's about taking all this data from LinkedIn and making something out of it, right? And so this is probably my favorite enrichment out of all of them. It's an ability to use AI to score your lead. The reason you only see tier 1 and 2 here, sorry, most of them are tier 1 and tier 2, but there's some unqualified. There's some tier 3s. We have our own way of qualifying leads for ColdIQ services, but basically it's a prompt that gives them all this information: company name, LinkedIn description, industry, domain, LinkedIn profile, etc. And for us, what's important is that the prospect is a B2B company. They have a product or service that can be sold digitally. They have a lifetime value of over $1,000, and they should be able to use email as a lead gen channel. That's important for us. For you, you would basically put what's important there for you. But as long as you give the prompt enough info as to investigate, then this works remarkably well. Like I spend a while optimizing this, but just getting this done once means you can now prioritize your whole TAM. So tier 1 is a lot more important than tier 2, which is a lot more important than tier 3. So just like that, we have lead prioritization.
Hey, Dan, I have a question, if I could chime in really quick. I get this question quite a bit in regards to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, a lot of people have their personal email address on LinkedIn. And so how would you, well, one, would you recommend people to send, like those of us doing outbound, to send to personal emails like Gmail or what have you? Or is there a way to use Clay to find the business email? And would you be able to show or make a recommendation for our audience?
For sure. So first things first, personal email stuff is a bit tough. I don't know if you guys heard, about 6 months ago, the entire world of cold email outbound went a bit crazy because Google released this announcement that if 3 out of every 1,000 of your emails gets reported as spam, that you basically, like, you won't be able to deliver to Google. But everyone thought that was going to affect cold email. In reality, that was actually something only put in place for personal Google inboxes. So specifically at gmail.com, which means if you get spam reported from a Gmail inbox, you could destroy that entire inbox very quickly, much quicker than getting spam reports on a work email. However, before that happens, you actually deliver great to Gmail. So we have two different industries that we typically will use personal email for. One is e-com. Even like multi-million-dollar e-com stores will use their Gmail for some reason as like they don't even have a work email. They don't care. So like e-com, you're really missing out on a bunch of your time if you don't reach out to personal email. And like stuff around real estate, obviously, because that's kind of someone's personal email that they're usually associating. So we still reach out to personal emails though. And what you find is those campaigns perform great until they don't. Like until you get enough spam reports that the inboxes die, it works great. So you're basically just playing on a floor of lava when you're reaching out to personal emails, but there is a chance that it works very well, at least at the start. So that's my recommendation there. If you didn't want to reach out to the personal email and you wanted to find their work email, Clay actually has some enrichments for this. I think it's called personal. Find one second. Yeah, so you can enrich for the person from their personal email with all these various providers, get their LinkedIn, and then use their LinkedIn to find their work email. And then, yeah, the easiest way to go from personal email to work email is try to use their personal email to find their LinkedIn, essentially.
Cool.
So yeah, that's a bit of a tough one though. If you do find someone's personal email and you really don't want to reach out to personal emails, I'd probably just exclude them from your workflow unless you want to go through some, complicated workaround like this.
Okay. Cool.
So that's that. So going back to the workflow, once we confirmed if they're tier 1 or tier 2, now the next job is to understand if we have the right contact info for the person. So, oh yeah, just one second. Something's freezing up here on my end. But essentially what we mentioned before is that an email will have 3 different statuses if you place it through any validation provider. You guys might have heard of Million Verifier. And any verification provider will tell you if an email is valid, catch-all, or invalid. Invalid, never reach out to. Valid, always reach out to. Catch-all, a bit difficult to say. So with catch-alls in this workflow, we're actually trying to find new emails for that person. In a lot of cases, what you see is that you end up finding a new email for them. Something's very slow on my end. Sorry. So, sorry, just give me 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing and reshare.
While we're figuring that out, maybe we could address a couple of questions. So let's see, there's a question that was asked earlier on. Would you add cold calling, so phone, into an outbound email workflow? I'll go ahead and provide my point of view. I say for outbound, you want to use a multi-channel approach. Now, which channels to use really depends on your target market. Because if a particular market is not active or does not like to be reached out to via a particular channel, then you don't want to use that. One example is I worked with a portco before where they were using LinkedIn messaging as part of their outbound sequences. And turns out that their market is not active on LinkedIn. So no matter what kind of messaging or targeting, it could be the best targeting, best messaging. If they're not active on a particular channel, then there's no point, right? So I guess in general, for a phone or cold call, it really depends on your market. Also, what kind of contact information as well. Are you getting contact phone numbers to a company main corporate line? And if it's a large enterprise, you have to go and navigate and find that person through a directory, and that can take a while. Or do you have, access to contacts for their personal mobile phone, for example? Some companies or some industries, your contacts live and die right next to their phone. And so they prefer to be reached out to those or via that channel. We have companies in the construction management industry. That's the key channel for them. But for those that, like myself, I don't like to get business calls out of the blue on my own personal phone. And so I would never answer any of those calls. And in fact, I would block them. So that the short answer to this, it really is, it depends on your target market. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess it's also a matter of go-to-market efficiency, right? It's like at the end of the day, it's about, how much resource are you putting in to get what output? If in your industry you find a great ROI on cold call, then don't listen to what anyone else tells you about your industry. You know what your data is saying, and if you're profitable on a certain channel. I know for us, we're a lead gen agency. Yeah, we also are in the education space, but we're in a pretty trustless space. And cold calling, it's all about building that trust. And so for us, we actually prefer allocating that resource to warm calling. We get a lot of sort of loose inbound people visiting our profiles, people visiting our website. We actually prefer to focus the efforts on those slightly warmer leads just to increase the chance of that cold call working out. And we leave the totally cold stuff to email, which we can scale, and obviously ads and all the other channels. But, for us specifically, it's more of a warm calling motion, but I know several companies that have a very successful cold calling motion. So it really depends on what your needs are. Fivos has done thousands of cold calls in his life, so I'm not sure if you have anything to add there, Fivos.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The automation that we build as well is just, it works so well. Whenever we get a positive answer, automatically you get the phone number, so you need to waste no time at all. So the sooner you pick up the phone from the moment you get a positive answer, the higher the conversion rate is, and that's what our companies are doing as well.
Cool. So for some reason, Fivos, do you mind sharing your screen instead of me? I cannot get this working, and I'm just going to send you the exact table if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Just saying over.
All right, while we're waiting for that, let me address another question that came in. So what platform has the best data to target users? Some say ColdIQ tool list. It's fairly far down the list. Like I've worked with a lot of different data providers, and you guys have as well. And I used to work at a company that provided data. So two of them, actually. I'd say ZoomInfo is sort of like the incumbent 800-pound gorilla, if you will. They have a lot of data. But look, at the end of the day, you want to find the provider that has the right data for you, because not a single data provider will have 100% coverage of all the markets out there, regarding industry, geographies, types of people, and no one single data source will have 100% accuracy as well as depth of data. So that's sort of like it depends answer to your question, Vanessa. But really, what I would recommend is consider your market, what market you're operating in, you're selling to. And if you want to shortlist a couple of different data providers, just do a quick test or a proof of concept where you say, hey, look, do you have coverage for these types of companies? And show me, like a list. It could be a redacted list or whatever. But, you want to get a sense of how good of a coverage they have for your market. And that's how I've evaluated different data providers. ZoomInfo, it's generally more pricier, especially for startups. Their licenses are more expensive than some of the other tools. And also there's plenty of tools out there that allows you to do things like scraping, like Clay could probably do some scraping, DataBar, which, by the way, I have mentioned DataBar is a portfolio company. And so that's why we mentioned DataBar here a lot. But at the end of the day, you guys have to, an audience, you pick the right tool for your business and for your market.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. Our main issue with ZoomInfo is the pricing. It's definitely good data, but I don't know if it's the most cost-efficient solution out there. So that's the only issue. Cool. So sorry about the little mishap there. I think I had too much going on. But anyways, Fivos is doing that nice and well for me. So we bring it through that waterfall email finding, where we're using Find Email, Lead Magic, Drop Contact, Hunter, Datama, PhoneReach. You might have heard of these guys. It doesn't really matter. What the point is that we're trying multiple sources to eventually end up, if you want to scroll to the right, to eventually end up at that waterfall email, which we're then validating again. And then we have that final enrich column, which is the combination of what Prospero found us through SalesNav, as well as that waterfall email enrichment. And then if they are tier 1 or tier 2 and we have a valid email, that's when reach out equals yes. And that's when we start this personalization waterfall. I'm not going to go too deep into it because it's a bit specific to our use case, but we have that tool list. I know someone mentioned it in the chat. A lot of these companies were actually on our tool list. So let me step back. Waterfall personalization is where you're looking for multiple data points on a single person to find something to personalize on. So I mentioned like a signal first approach, which you wouldn't need this, but because we actually had a person first approach, like I had all these SDRs, 2,500. What do I say to them now? That's when you would do a waterfall personalization, because I don't just want to do some generic, opener. I still want to personalize it, right? So the first one we're doing is if they're on our sales tool list, which we're finding through Airtable, we store it all there. I read a line that's basically saying, hey, since you're on our list, I figure you might already know ColdIQ. But that's just like a select few amount of the leads. If they're not on the list, which is a majority of them, We're then asking AI to find out if they're a company that can be called a sales tech company or an AI company. We're interested in those two areas because sales tech, it's what our list is about. And it is the space that we're in. And AI, because obviously the offer is about using AI as an SDR. So if they're the seller, you can just click on any of the rows. We're saying, if you just double click that, Fivos, yeah, since you're just on the right there, yeah. Since you're selling growth engine to other revenue teams, I'd imagine you're looking to maximize the quality of outreach, just like an opener, but it's very relevant because they are selling growth engine to other revenue teams. If they're an AI tool, we're saying, if you just, since Ask Suite being in the AI space, I'd imagine you're also thinking about ways to use AI in your sales process. Again, these are going to be according to your offer, but this is just an example of how you can basically use AI to find some sort of segmentation for your list and then building copy based on that. But then if we don't find any of that stuff, based on how long they've been at the company, if they're in their first year or if they're in their first year and a half, or if they're approaching their 2-year mark, we have slightly different things to say in each of those scenarios. But yeah, again, just a personalized line with over 2 years at Ask Suite. Imagine that keeping up to date with SDR best practices falls on your plate. That's just our personalized line. And so we have that final merge column, which is like, as you see, every single opener is going to be different because we did that waterfall personalization. But I want to add some additional personalization on top of that. So I'm finding out if we're reaching out to any of their other colleagues in this workflow. And then I'm going to reference that colleague in the PS line, if that's the case. So if you, right there, yes, I'm reaching out to Marcel from your team about this too. Just another element of personalization. If we don't find that, it simply skips that line. And then this is the last piece. I know we're getting pretty deep, but I then have Perplexity research their accounts. I then have Claude give me 3 campaign ideas that we would recommend them. So that in that second email, I basically recommend them a few campaigns. All this to basically achieve the final results, which I will show you right now. If you just give me 1 second.
These are all mapped to instantly. So all this information, you can see that these are the variables that we use. And this is how all of these will actually make sense. Because all of this data will be pushed to instantly. Also a question, yes, you can push this to HubSpot. The issue with HubSpot is that you cannot have rotating inboxes. So you probably need another seat if you want another mailbox. So that's why we prefer tools that are built for deliverability, like Instantly and Smartly. So Dan will show now what does actually these look like there.
I was really sorry. My computer is literally dying right now. If you could just pull up instantly that recent campaign and just pull up the campaign preview. I just want to show people what all that fancy stuff gets you in the final results. Also, just to show, I don't think you need to do any of the fancy AI personalization stuff. One thing I mentioned earlier, your list is your message. If you segment your list enough, if you know that you're reaching out to this title and this industry and this pocket of your market, you don't need to do any AI personalization. You probably have something specific enough to say to that segment of the market that a lot of this stuff I'm showing you is redundant. This is kind of to show you what's possible with the tools that are out there. So yeah, just to show you a final result of the type of stuff you can do. But honestly, I think every other step leading up to that AI personalization is going to be more important. So if you go to sequences and then just do any preview, and you just click preview there, yeah. Hey Dalton, with over 2 years at Linewiz, I imagine that keeping up to date with SDR best practices falls on your plate. From working with 200 plus tech companies, including multiple YC startups and unicorns, we've built AI systems that automate data enrichment, account research, and outreach personalization. Next week, we're releasing a mini course, 52 minutes, that teaches you everything you need to know to start. Because of the community of SDRs that love AI. Should I put you on the wait list? And if you scroll down a little bit, Fivos. Okay, that's not one where we had that extra PSS, but in about half of these, we're reaching out to that other colleague. We're saying, hey, I'm reaching out to this person about this as well. And Fivos, if you want to show that second email preview. These are pretty good campaign ideas. Hey, Dalton, here's a link in case you're interested. We broke a cold email rule that right there, but that's because I really want people to visit that page. So we're taking the deliverability sacrifice there, but I'm saying either way, here's some places you'll be able to automate. You can read those yourselves, but these are legit plays that are based on that person's offer. Did AI do Linewiz justice on these? I'm owning that it's AI. But yeah, I literally launched this 2 hours ago. I already got even more now, probably around 5 positive responses. I think last time I checked that number was at 70. So it's working well. SDRs are obviously interested in this stuff. And it goes to show this is kind of where the market's heading, not necessarily using AI to replace you, but using AI to make you much more intelligent, much smarter, much more informed in your approach, so that you can focus on highly strategic tasks instead of like manual data entry, account research. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't think we had time to go over the RB2B flow, but it actually works very similarly. We're taking RB2B visitors that are coming in, we're finding their correct contact info, scoring them the exact same prompt that I showed you, and then just sending them to instantly campaigns or lemless campaigns, depending also on what page they visited. We have different pieces of content depending on that. That's basically opening up Pandora's box of what's possible with this stuff. Hopefully that was interesting to people, and curious to take any questions.
Yeah, if you don't mind flipping to the closing slides. But quick question for you, Dan, with your campaign that you just launched that you got 5 responses so far. I'm just out of curiosity, how many did you send out to get that 5?
I think today we're at a 1% positive reply rate. So I think we've sent about 600 today. But honestly, that campaign is very, very special, and selling to SDR is a bit of a cheat code. So I don't want to let's use that 330 leads per positive reply as a baseline for the audience versus that 1 to 100. But that's what we're working on that campaign.
Cool. Awesome. And then I know we didn't get time to dig into the RB2B program or whatever you want to call it. For those people who don't know, RB2B is a tool is another one of these tools that you implement where you could identify people who come to your website but did not fill out a form. So there's plenty of tools out there. I think some of our portcos also offer something like that as well. But, that's a really interesting play where someone comes to your website and they didn't fill out a form, so they didn't say that who they were, but you can identify through like a Slack integration. You can say, oh yeah, someone just visited my website and their name is this, they work at this company, blah, blah, blah. It's an interesting playbook, but you want to overcome some sort of like creepiness factor when you're utilizing something like that. So maybe Fivos and Dan, maybe I could convince you guys to do either another session or maybe a blog post on how you guys have set that kind of campaign up. Basically, someone comes to your website and you're doing an automated outreach to engage with them. All right. So we are out of time. There's a bunch of questions that we didn't get a chance to get through. So apologies for that. We'll try to go through them offline. But if you do have very burning questions, you can see Fivos's email there, fivos@coldiq.com, or you can reach out to me or your Mucker advisor if you are a Mucker portco. So yeah, definitely reach out to them. They'll either help you or point you guys in the right direction. And who knows, maybe they can, help your company if it's the right fit. So for future sessions, if there is a burning topic that you guys want to cover, let me or Britton know. Just to give you guys a sneak peek for the next December session, we reached out to our friends over at G2, and they're actually going to give sort of an overview of all these different sales tools that, like Fivos and Dan covered a few of them that they use today, right? So that's the next session coming up in December. So stay tuned for that. And then we've got a few more lined up through the beginning of next year. But again, we're always open for any ideas that you guys would like to learn about. So let us know. And then lastly, I know we're over time. If you are a founder, an entrepreneur, and would like additional help, if you're currently not in the Mucker portfolio family, go to mucker.com and, pitch us your company. And, who knows, like we might be a great fit in terms of helping you, not just writing a check, but, we work with our founders very closely to make sure that they're in the right spot. And also we work with other partners like ColdIQ and make connections for you. So definitely check out mucker.com and apply or submit your company if you are at the right time, right stage to do so. Thanks everyone for staying with us. Thank you, Fivos and Dan. I know it's late for you guys because you guys are based in Barcelona. Thanks for joining us, and we'll continue additional learnings together in future sessions. Thanks everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.